Hello, it's the Great Canadian Bagel here, coming to you with the next and second last Sunday update for the 2021 Canadian federal election forecast. This is projected as per Sunday. It is being posted on Monday because posting a video at 1 a.m. is not very good business sense, so I'm posting it the next day because that's when it was finished. Yeah, that's what it is. Okay. Let's get into the actual interesting part of the video here. So, we've had the debates this last week, which haven't filtered into the data yet. So, the current standings here are not really affected by the debates. We're really going to start seeing that come midweek, how the debates affected things. In the in the interim, here's what has happened. So, starting this east to west to east, so Yukon flipped to Liberal. It's still within margin of error, so it could easily flip back between the Conservatives, could stay in the Liberal column. It's all over the place. For the most part, the prairies have stayed pretty constant. I will note that there's been a bunch of polls for Saskatchewan and Manitoba apparently have the Conservatives like trailing quite far behind in second place, which I've ignored because I don't believe it. Now, I will note I would not disbelieve it if the People's Party was also quite high in these polls, like the Ecos polls, for example. Like Ecos today, I had like Conservatives at like 30 something and NDP at 40 something, and the People's Party is very small in Saskatchewan. I could believe it if the People's Party was like 10-15% range. There's just no way that the Conservatives got right-wing parties got like 67% of Saskatchewan's vote in 2019, and this election they're getting less than 40. No, it's not happening. That's just a bad poll, bad sample. I don't know what's wrong with it, but that was wrong. So I'm not considering it. So there's not been as many polls for Saskatchewan and Manitoba here actually put into the model because of this, but the West has stayed pretty constant. The Liberals have now regained their plus 40 margin in Ontario, and by that I mean not margin like over the Conservatives or any of the next party, but their plurality of over 40%. This has caused them to pick up 2 seats in the Conservatives and, 2 seats in the Conservatives and 2 seats from the NDP. Going into Quebec here, some interesting changes have occurred. So the Bloc has picked up a seat back from the NDP, and the People's Party have picked up Boyce from the Conservatives. It's a very narrow. I would not. This is not a comfortable margin. It could easily go to the Conservative column on election day. It could easily go by a pretty decent margin for Bernier. But they are on the scoreboard here, and they are now up here in this purple. I've removed other because I don't think there's a single independent candidate who has a meaningful chance of getting elected this election, so they're gone. Been replaced by this People's Party purple. Moving into New Brunswick here, St. John's Rothsay has been picked up by the Liberals, and the Liberals have now taken the lead in the province from the Conservatives. A lot of this seems to be the Conservatives have lost some of their right edge of their party to the People's Party. Same thing with PEI. The Conservatives lost a seat to the Liberals. And all in all, the Liberals have picked up 7 seats, and the Conservatives have lost 6 seats. NDP have lost 3. Bloc has gained 1. So that's where we are at the status. A lot has changed in the last week. We went from last Sunday, we went from a small a relatively small but stable Conservative minority. I would say stable because Bloc and Conservatives could perfectly pass confidence motions between the two of them. So small but likely stable Conservative minority to a small but likely stable Liberal minority, because again, it's just two parties holding balance of power. I say relatively stable, meaning that it's unlikely that the an election happening before about the 2-year mark would be, in this case, Trudeau's effort to win a better majority. Or majority. Again, part 2. Now, if we go into some raw data here, I will note, just before I go into this, I've stopped looking at these graphs because we're in the last week officially. I mean, technically, as of posting this video, it will be literally the last week, but the campaign is winding to an end here, so the trends aren't going to really mean much because there's just so much dynamism going on. So as we can see, since Wednesday, the Conservatives have lost 0.7 percentage points of support nationally. The Liberals have gained 0.8. NDP have lost an entire point. The Greens have regained 0.2. Bloc has regained 0.3-ish. People's Party has gained 0.5-ish, and Other has gained about 0.05. So what has actually happened here? What I think has happened, because remember, this is not data that has been really affected by the debates yet. There's only been two. The main three rolling pollsters, or daily pollsters, Nanos, Ecos, and Main Street, have only had 2 days of post-debate data, and the first day doesn't really count because it doesn't, like, it. A lot of the post-debate effect is the media coverage that comes out of it, so that wouldn't be really affecting the Friday numbers that they polled. It would be start filtering the Saturday, the Sunday, Monday. So tomorrow, or today, if you're when the video is released, so September 13th, then we'll really get to see how the debates have affected things. There's something that's shining through right now, which is it's definitely pushed the Bloc forward. I think it's pretty been nailed on the head. The first question asked to Blanchette, is Quebec racist? Or what are you doing about Quebec's racism? Or I don't recall the exact phraseology of the question. Really dumb question. It's a very loaded question. It's like asking a politician, like, when did you stop hitting your wife? It's like your question is assuming the answer there. It is a very bad question, and it pissed off a lot of Quebecers, and rightly so. I think it is a bad question to ask people, and frankly, it is kind of an offensive question to say this entire area is racist. I don't care about the intricacies of Bill 21. It's just inappropriate thing for a debate question to have. It's an inappropriate question, but it has really pushed the Bloc support. So, big faux pas there. If the debate moderators the debate question was supposed to be critical of the Bloc and their support of Bill 21, they really just inflared support for the Bloc. So, a bit of egg on their face there. But other than that, it's really kind of hard to say what's been leading through in the polls so far from it. From the debate, it looks like maybe this morning there's a bit of an inkling of a conservative rally. I say rally because technically my model has them leading, but because of how the quirks of our election system, if we go back over to here, since the Liberals do quite well in this half of the country, and there's disproportionately many seats in this part of the country, not even Ontario, just this part of the country, there's disproportionately many seats. Their vote is very efficient, and even in places like Ontario, they get pretty low vote scores in most of rural Ontario, but very high in urban Ontario, like Toronto and London and Hamilton and Ottawa. So the Liberal vote is extremely efficient, which is why even down they can still win. But that is what it is. There's really not any meaningful way we can fix that other than potentially redistricting. And that would only do it so-so. But I actually, though, I do strongly think there should be some redistricting in Ontario if these numbers are accurate to the election results. If the Liberals are up 4 in Ontario and they're getting 27 more seats, all of them by pretty narrow margins, I think there's something wrong with the districting there, and they probably need to be redistricted. You could even argue the same with Alberta. Like, yeah, the Conservatives do quite well. They're at 61%, but you could argue that the districting in Edmonton or Calgary, for example, is disproportionately favorable to the Conservatives. Like, I don't think there's any intentional gerrymandering or anything going on here, but I think there is some bad districting that has occurred. Possibly was good when it was first drawn, but I think the district maps definitely need to be redrawn now with how they've seated. And ideally, we would remove the surplus seats that are over here, mostly in Atlantic Canada. Like, why does PEI have 4 seats? Like, the island has 140,000 people. There's ridings in Alberta that have like 130,000 people. So what? They get 1 rep and PEI gets 4. Anyways, there's a lot of problems with this that I think we do actually need to address. Like, the Liberals being more efficient is not strictly because of where they're popular. It's very it's a quirk of the system and how the districts have been drawn and how they've been allocated to provinces, and that definitely needs to be fixed because this is not. It's not reasonable that your system allows a second place like the party that's not even the most popular, to reliably win more seats. I'm not one of those people who really thinks like proportional representation is the way to go, but there is a lot to be said that vote should have the percentage of vote you get should have some indication of how many seats you get. So that is a problem with the system, but ignoring that problem, a bit of a long-winded sidetrack here. The important thing to know here, for both the Liberal supporters and the Conservative supporters, is yes, the Liberals are back in the lead now, as of yesterday, as you can see here. But the important thing here is it looks like the polls might be inflecting as of this morning. One day is not an inflection make, but all 3 pollsters, Main Street, Ecos, and Nanos, all had Liberals lose support day over day, and Nanos and Ecos had Conservatives gain support day over day. Ecos still having the Conservatives in the lead. Main Street had the Conservatives lose some support, so there's still, but I believe at a lower rate than the day before. So it's very possible going into tomorrow that the curve will be inflecting. Again, we'll have to see. I mean, there won't be a video tomorrow. Well, I mean, a video with tomorrow's numbers tomorrow. But the point stands. Now, you may ask yourself, though, before I wrap this up, how did we get here? We look back here. On September 5th, the Conservatives had a 10-seat lead. If we look at the raw data, on September 5th, the Conservatives were leading by 4.2 points, percentage points. How did they squander that lead? What has happened here? Well, some people, I think, if the Conservatives lose this election, will go and be like, Aaron O'Toole's gun policy screwed him over the election, and he lost the election because he he was kowtowing to the gun lobby or some nonsense like that. That's wrong. Straight up. The data doesn't support that. They'll say it. Mark my words, they'll say it. But if he loses, if he wins, I think they'll ignore it. But if he loses, they will say it. And that's not what's going on. It's not that the Conservative Party was too right-wing on guns. The problem was Aaron O'Toole appears to have flip-flopped on guns. I don't think that's strictly true. In a sense, like, it is true that he's not going to unilaterally remove the OIC now. That is a true statement, or at least he says so. But I think in practice, if he does a fair review of the system, it will mean the OIC is going to get removed, but because the OIC has no rational basis. But that's not here nor there. People will say 100% the fact that he was talking about removing the OIC is why he lost. No. On September 5th, People's Party is at 2.5. Now they're at 3.3. That's a 0.8 support. And how much of support have the Conservatives lost? Oh wait, 1.2. So 66% of the support they lost seems to have went to the People's Party. And then a decent portion of the rest has went to the Bloc. It went from 2.1 to 21.1, or is that the right thing? Yeah, 20.1 to 19.8. Doesn't sound like a lot, but Quebec has a lot of people, so that's a good amount of support. And they lost some support to the Liberals, that is true. Well, but they also support the Liberals probably is the statement. They probably lost some support to the Liberals. But again, really not that much. Almost all the Liberal support they gained here is 100% being taken from the NDP. The NDP on September 5th were 17.4, and now they're at 17. Like, most of that support there that the Liberals have gained is come from the NDP. About half of it. And there's some margins elsewhere. So we look at it, most of the NDP's Liberal support seems to come from the NDP, most of their gains, and most of the Conservative losses seems to have went to the People's Party. Now, why would that be? Is that because people are like, oh no, Aaron O'Toole wants to get rid of arbitrary gun laws? Can't vote for him. No. He lost support to the People's Party because people saw him backtrack on his promise, and in places like rural New Brunswick, rural Nova Scotia, even in urban Nova Scotia, rural Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, heck, even probably rural British Columbia. And obviously there's gun owners in urban areas too, but like the gun owners are predominantly in rural areas. We're all very disheartened by this. I cannot emphasize enough how disheartened this happened. I think a lot of them then, thinking that the parties basically abandoned them, have moved to the People's Party. And a lot of them are not going to vote now. I think a lot of the Conservative losses here, so the other like 0.3, because I think about 0.1 probably went to the Bloc. The other 0.3 isn't losses to the Liberals per se. I think it's actually just people who aren't voting anymore. And because the bunch of Conservative voters are not voting anymore, by proxy that means the Liberal voters take up a larger share of the pie. I don't think the voters switched to voting Liberal. I don't think they switched to voting NDP. I don't think they switched to voting Green. I think they're just straight up not going to vote now. Or at least they think they're saying they're not going to vote now. Whether that holds true in a week's time on election day and everyone has their last moment and will they hold their nose and vote for O'Toole? Maybe. Do they not bother showing up? Also maybe. This is 100%. If he loses the campaign, if O'Toole loses this election in the next week, he will have lost entirely on his own unforced error. I don't think there's any need for him to walk back the guns. If he put it in his platform, he should have had a already prepared statement. It was obvious to anybody with a brain the Liberals would try to attack him over it. But just because it's obvious the enemy's going, or the enemies, that's a bad term, the other party is going to attack you in an election on an issue, doesn't mean you abandon that issue. That means you come up with an articulate and clear and concise response for that issue, for that attack that you're expecting. He did this with healthcare. He did this with abortion. Why did he not have one ready for guns? Those are the trifecta. Those are the three things that the liberals literally always attack the Conservative Party for. Why did he have not any prepared? I don't know. His only plan was apparently to walk back his platform. I don't know. That's what he did. And I'm telling you right now, maybe voters will give him the benefit of the doubt. Because in essence, I don't think he... My interpretation is I don't believe he wants the guns to stay banned. He just is being really clever now, and instead of doing it unilaterally, he wants to do it through a review and use the review to be like, yeah, there's no rational basis for it, to try to shut down a debate. I don't think that's going to work. I mean, it is going to work in that I think if he does do an actual proper review, all the various guns that got banned will be unbanned. But I don't think it's going to shut down the debate. I think the Liberals and the NDP and all the other anti-gun parties will crow at him for it. But, again, that's neither here nor there. The important thing here isn't the issue. It isn't guns. It isn't healthcare. It isn't abortion. Or any other wedge issue that someone tries to make. It isn't vaccines. It isn't reconciliation. It isn't climate change. All these things are stupid. They don't matter. Issues don't matter. Straight up, they don't matter. What matters in an election is not the issues. It's not where your stance is on the issue. It literally doesn't matter. What matters is, can you convince voters that your stance is correct? There's no correct stance on any of these issues. There's zero issues in this world where there's a correct stance. There's some that are wrong. There are wrong stances. But there's no correct stance. To go a specific example, healthcare. What is a good healthcare system? How much government involvement should be in the healthcare system? That's not a clear answer. There's pros and cons to having more government involvement and less government involvement. Everyone will sit somewhere on that spectrum, but there's no really clear definitive answer. There's no objectively correct answer. Some systems are better than others. For example, you could argue the French healthcare system is a superior version to the Canadian one. They have they have almost zero public hospitals, but they have a government-run insurance system, so everyone has universal coverage. There's pros and cons to it, but it's pretty, given how much the costs and healthcare outcomes, it's probably safe to say that the French system is better. So you can say specific systems might be better than other specific systems, but when you remove the specificity of implementation and you're talking about in the abstract terms, there's no actual correct answer there. There's no answer that everyone in Canada will ever be happy with. That doesn't matter. And that's one important thing I'm trying to emphasize here. Issues don't matter. What matters is your stance on the issue. Literally nobody cares. Like, no one actually sits down and is like, yes, guns. Ooh, 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 ah. We gotta ban all the guns. Or we gotta unban all the guns. No one's like that. And yes, I'm making dumb sounds because it's dumb. There's people who are like, well, we should have the right to have guns for self-defense, or so we can go sport shooting, or so we can go hunting, or so we can overthrow the government who's tyrannical. I don't know. These are positions people can have. Or you could have the position that guns are always going to be used to hurt people, so we shouldn't let them happen. I'll be honest. I have a pretty clear side on this debate if it's not come through here, so I don't really have any good pro arguments for gun control, but the specifics, again, is it doesn't matter which side you're on, per se. What matters is, it doesn't matter where you are on gun control. It matters how you are selling it. It matters who you're selling it to. Someone who hunts, who sports shoots, who wants a gun for self-defense, who wants a gun so if the government is tyrannical, they can hold it in check. You will never sell gun control to those people. Maybe you can sell to the hunter, oh, we can ban automatic guns. Okay, maybe. Maybe you can sell to the sports shooter that I can't actually think of something you can sell to a sports shooter that gun control wise. Maybe you could sell them licensing. I don't know. Maybe you can sell the self-defense person licensing. The person who wants to overthrow government tyranny, you're never going to sell any gun control to. Basically, if you are a U.S. Second Amendment gun person, you will never accept gun control. That's what it is. If you are someone who thinks guns should be banned, or so heavily restricted that it's implausible to get them privately, any pro-gun is going to be a turnoff. So the point I'm making here isn't, this is getting a bit long-winded here, but the problem isn't that O'Toole was pro-gun in his platform. The people he was losing wouldn't vote for him anyways. People who did not want pro-gun laws were never going to vote for the Conservative Party. People who want gun control, who liked the liberal OIC ban, were always going to vote Liberal or NDP. Those are not accessible voters to the Conservatives. So what mattered here wasn't O'Toole's stance on the issue. I think if he just looked at the person asking the question, are you going to overturn the OIC? And was like, yes. And dropped the mic and walk off the stage, I don't think he would have gotten any meaningful flack. Actually, he might have gotten people saying based at him, because that would actually be hilarious. But going at it and being like, oh, flipping your stance on it, well, you're still not going to get the people who are pro-gun control, because if you liked the OIC ban, why would you trust O'Toole now? He said previously he was going to do it, and he changed his mind the last 2 weeks of a campaign. Why would you trust that guy? I would never trust that guy. If tomorrow Trudeau came out and said he's going to unban all the guns, I would never trust Trudeau to do that. Why did his mind just suddenly change? He was losing the election? Well, that's a terrible reason to change your mind. That's so cynical. No, there's zero people who meaningfully would have picked up. Maybe there's some squishy suburban voters in like GTA who don't understand the issue, but that's why you have an articulate and clear and rational argument prepared so you can talk to them about it. Because if they're squishy on the issue, you can convince them. If they're not squishy on the issue, they will never vote for you anyways. So all of this is to say, O'Toole took a stance into an election campaign. His base liked that stance. He became leader because of that stance of the party. Then he flipped on it. Soft. It's a soft flip, not a full flip. I think he's still going to unban the guns, but it is he publicly flipped on the issue because he was afraid he was going to lose voters, so he lost voters. Not the ones he was afraid of losing, and there's really no evidence he would have lost other voters. He didn't lose any voters when the Liberals tried to attack him over privatizing healthcare or trying to ban abortion. They tried that. Didn't hurt him. In fact, it might have made the numbers better. We'll never know, obviously, but that's contrapositive. But again, we will never know. So, I guess to wrap this all up, O'Toole fumbled the ball. He's running towards the touchdown line. He has the ball. He's like 20 yards away, and he just tripped. And then Trudeau ran up and picked up the ball and started running the other way. And O'Toole's trying to catch up and intercept him and stop Trudeau from coming in with the touchdown. This is a weird sports analogy, but It was an unforced error. Trudeau or O'Toole might have lost this election in an unforced error. Again, we have 7 days, and the polls are showing signs they might go the other way, that they're going back towards the Conservatives. But mark my words, if he loses, people in the media are going to say it's because he was too conservative on guns. And that's a lie. It's a fabrication. There's no evidence for this. There's zero evidence to support this position. They will say it. But that all said, if you enjoyed the video, please like, share, subscribe, comment below. Let me know if the mood in your riding seems to have changed to the Conservatives. I know a lot of people earlier in previous videos are saying that their previously strong Liberal areas or strong NDP areas seem more open to the Conservatives this election, or maybe even more inclined to vote Conservative this election. I'd like to see if that's still the case going around. Now let me know if you guys want more long-winded issue dissections like the second half of this video. I could do more. I have many things I could dissect long-winded. I just don't know if there's viewers who are interested in it. there's a certain amount of effort in making videos that if there's not an audience for it, it's not really worth doing it. That makes sense. Otherwise, I hope you all have a good day, and see you next time.